that's the calling you talked about earlier, that you're leaning of learning more about the firearms, and then knowing more about them, and then training,
Yes.
and then holding and managing the firearms,
Yes.
and then now you are going
Yes.
behind the backyard of the firearms and then doing things with the firearms.
Yeah. It's been, like I said, ever since I was young, quite young. My dad's ex-military.
Mm-hmm.
He taught me to safely handle firearms. And I always used them safely. I joined a club when I graduated from the police, at the police academy. There was not a lot of training available, so the only option that was given to me by the trainers at the academy at that time was go join a gun club. So I did, and it just expanded from there. I've always been interested in how things work, doing things with my hand, taking things apart, putting them back together. And also the application and use of force I find really fascinating. And that's what was quite interesting in the last 7 years. That 7-year period of my career where I did firearms training and use of force. So that job didn't just entail training. I'd also, not consult, but I would be part of the district office response to use of force incidents. So that's the managerial response. Anytime there was a use of force incident in the district, and form part of that that overview of that incident. So I spent a lot of time thinking about, considering, looking at the justifications of, looking at the effects of use of force and what it does to people. My sergeant for most of that time, he had some injuries with his knee, so I always had to when we did scenario training, and I always played the bad guy. So that's a really interesting thing, to have to repetitively play the bad guy and be arrested or whatever, dealt with by your colleagues. It's a very interesting perspective to take. And it's very interesting to see the effects of force. I strongly believe that the human proclivity to default to force at every instance, it seems to be becoming more of a prevalent factor in community. That proclivity to just use force indiscriminately and just default to force is so, it's pernicious, it's destructive to the way humans get along. It's the least positive form of human interaction. It's the worst we can do. And people forget that legislation is force.
Yeah.
It is. Like, why not let people self-regulate as a default position? Unfortunately, legislation and force is needed sometimes, and I'm fascinated by it. If I could still go back to my job the way it was, and assuming the police department is still the police department that it was, which it's not, I like my job. So part of me would like to go back, but in reality, that's not a reality. So the use of force is fascinating, and I think people don't spend enough time thinking about what it means to use force against another human being. It's not nice.